In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NBA games happening on February 26th, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Charlotte Hornets versus Indiana Pacers. The line for this game screams blowout on paper, but the human side of it feels a lot messier. Charlotte walks in riding this huge wave of confidence, the cool new story in the East, the team everybody suddenly wants to be early on, before the trends get crowded. They started the season stumbling around, then flipped the script once the calendar turned, and now they carry themselves like a group that expects to win every night, home or road. That kind of swagger is real, but it also sneaks into the number because oddsmakers and bettors fall in love fast when a young team starts stacking wins and putting up big offensive nights. Indiana sits at the complete opposite end of the mood chart. No franchise wants to be labeled the team you schedule on your get-right night, but that is pretty much how the Pacers are treated right now. They lost their star before the season got rolling. Watch that Achilles rehab story get even stranger this week with the shingles news, and they have been stuck in that weird space where the league still respects the coach and the vets, but the standings do not. Yet, for all the losing, they have also been stubborn. They play with pace, they keep throwing different lineups at the problem, and they rarely tap out from an effort standpoint, especially in front of their own fans who have sat through a lot and still show up. Charlotte's style feeds into that stubbornness in a funny way. They play faster when they feel comfortable, they fire early threes, they crash the glass like they are trying to win a rebounding contest at summer camp, and when they are rolling it looks beautiful. But that same style can turn into a little bit of chaos when they are heavy favorites. Quick shots lead to quick empty trips, long rebounds kick off transition the other way, and suddenly the underdog that was supposed to just quietly participate in the script is running downhill with nothing to lose. A hot favorite can still control a game on the eye test and never fully pull away on the scoreboard, and that is exactly the kind of gap we care about when we are talking spreads. The Hornets are also dealing with a real emotional swing right now. They just got through the whole drama of LaMelo's car crash being replayed from every angle, talked about after practice, replayed at halftime shows, and turned into a talking point on every studio desk. He walked away healthy, which is huge, but that kind of event hangs around a locker room for a few days. You get questions you are tired of answering, you have family calling, you have social media noise, and then you are supposed to lock in for a road game in Indiana where everyone has already decided you should cruise. That is the exact kind of spot where focus drifts for a quarter or two, and those are the stretches where a big underdog quietly builds a little cushion. Indiana, for all their issues, still has real professionals scattered across that rotation. Pascal Siakam did not forget how to score just because the team is near the bottom of the conference. Andrew Nembhard has been thrust into a bigger role and gets to run the show without looking over his shoulder. Ivica Zubac gives them a big body inside who can set bruising screens, create second chances, and at least make life annoying for a Hornets front line that has been feasting on softer interiors lately. Add in the kind of energetic wings and role players who are still fighting for next contracts and long-term roles, and you get a roster that might not win a lot of games, but can absolutely hang around if you give them a spark. The coaching angle leans that way too. Rick Carlisle knows exactly what this game looks like. He has been the favorite that everyone expects to dominate, and he has been the underdog clinging to effort and variance. With his star out, his season record in the gutter, and a fan base that still respects him, this is the kind of night where he can coach a little freer. More junk defenses, more creative lineups, more willingness to press the right button instead of the safe one, because there is not much to protect anymore except pride and development. That mindset often helps the team catching points far more than the one laying them. Charlotte, on the other hand, now carries something they did not have 2 months ago: pressure. Instead of sneaking up on people, they are circled on schedules. Opponents talk about their run, the media hypes them up as the hot league pass watch, and suddenly every role player is hearing about awards ladders and future all-star debates. Young groups do not always handle that smooth. You get a little more casual with the ball, a little more comfortable with 20-foot step-backs early in the clock, and a little less interested in the boring possessions where you grind out a cover in the fourth quarter. So you have a hungry, desperate home team with nothing to lose, playing fast, playing physical inside, backed by a coach who will lean into the chaos, facing a rising road favorite that has started to live in the headlines and the highlight reels. The market has already moved Charlotte into that taxed territory where you need them not just to win, but to win pretty, and that is asking a lot on a random February night in Indiana. If this turns into another high-energy, back-and-forth game, the Hornets can still leave with the win everyone expects, and the Pacers can still quietly cash for anyone holding the points. As our first pick for this matchup, the Indiana Pacers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full-game side pick. Charlotte has not exactly been interested in low-stress, low-scoring evenings lately. Their identity shift has been built on running, spacing, and letting that young core fire away from deep, then chasing every miss like a loose ball on a playground. They are happy to play in games where both teams pile up possessions and everyone walks out with inflated box scores and tired legs. Indiana quietly leans into that style too. Even with their season record buried, they have not tried to slow everything to a crawl and pretend they are a throwback grind team. They push off misses, they are willing to run after makes, and when you look at their recent results, you see a pattern that looks like pinball. High totals, long stretches where the defense feels optional, and just enough shot making from different guys to keep the scoreboard moving even when the offense looks disjointed. Matchups on the floor hint at more of that. The Hornets have wings and guards who love to attack early, pull up from deep, and punish any big man who is a half step late in transition. The Pacers counter with a front court that can score in space, slip screens, and make those little short rolls that keep a possession alive even when the first action dies. That mix of quick guards and skilled bigs on both sides usually leads to switches, mismatches, and a whole lot of scrambling rotations. Scrambling rotations mean late closeouts, and late closeouts usually end with threes in the air or driving lanes that get you either layups or free throws. Free throws might quietly be the engine here. On paper, it is easy to picture this as a three-point contest, but when tired legs show up in the second half, defenders start reaching instead of sliding. Charlotte's playmakers are crafty with the ball, and Indiana's scorers know they need to keep the pressure on if they want to trade punches instead of just trading empty trips. Whistles tend to follow that kind of game. More trips to the stripe means the clock stops while the points keep climbing, which is exactly what you want if you are leaning toward a higher scoring outcome. There is also the subtle schedule brain factor. In late February, teams are managing energy more than they admit. You often see a first half where both sides come out flying, then a third quarter lull, and then a final push where the game opens up again because nobody wants to grind through 30 seconds of textbook half-court defense anymore. Tired defenses make simple mistakes, switch when they should fight through, or overhelp and give up corner threes. Those little lapses show up in the total far more than they do in the win or loss column. If this one stays even remotely competitive into the fourth, coaches are not emptying the bench early. That means more minutes for the main offensive engines, more pick-and-roll actions, more designed threes for shooters that have been hot all month, and more late-game fouling if the margin sits in that awkward maybe we still have a shot range. Even in a game that starts to tilt, we see plenty of nights where bench guys come in and treat garbage time like their own audition, gunning for points and ignoring the notion of easing off the gas. From a scoring perspective, there are a lot of paths that still tilt toward a lively box score. Both teams lean naturally toward pace and space. Both have lineups that sacrifice a bit of defensive solidity for shooting and playmaking. Both have reasons to keep pushing rather than packing it in, whether it is Charlotte trying to keep this surge alive or Indiana trying to give its fan base something entertaining during a lost season. When styles mesh instead of clash, totals tend to climb, and this looks much more like a track meet than a chess match. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Miami Heat versus Philadelphia 76ers. The Miami Heat and Philadelphia 76ers meet Thursday in NBA action at Xfinity Mobile Arena. The Heat coming off a win over the Grizzlies and a loss to the Bucks, with the Rockets on deck, and they have taken 4 of their last 6, so they are not exactly limping into this spot. The 76ers just beat the Timberwolves, and Pacers have the Celtics ahead, and even with those wins, they have still dropped 5 of their last 8, which quietly shows how uneven their recent stretch has been. Miami is still without Nikola Jovic, Davion Mitchell lands in the questionable bucket, and on the other side, Philly is monitoring Joel Embiid as he deals with right shin soreness, a classic day-to-day cloud that hangs over the entire handicap. These teams already saw each other once this season, and that first meeting finished with Miami taking it 127-117 back on November 23rd, a result that reminds you the matchup is already in their muscle memory. This spot is not really about which roster feels better on paper, it is about how the pricing shapes the decision. Philly is the one listed as the favorite, but the market is treating the matchup like a near coin flip and still dangling a plus return on a team that tends to handle these pressure cooker road environments pretty well. When a game is expected to be fast and high scoring, variance goes up, and in those kinds of chaotic swings it usually makes more mathematical sense to grab the plus money side rather than paying a premium for the favorite that might only be slightly better. It is not a declaration that Miami is the superior team. It is more about the Heat having a very realistic path to winning outright and the real value living in how they are priced rather than in any emotional read. In a matchup that grades close to 50-50, repeatedly taking the plus money number is what pays over the long run, even if it feels a little uncomfortable in the moment. Miami also fits this type of game because they do not need a perfect offensive performance to stay attached and eventually sneak in front. They can live at the free throw line, they can lean into tempo for stretches, and they can force the other side to stack clean half-court possessions, which is tough for any team over 4 quarters. Philly, for its part, has shown it can sag into long spells where the efficiency just disappears, and that tendency matters more when you are laying points instead of catching them. This is one where checking confirmed lineups before tip-off really matters, especially around Embiid. But if he ends up sitting, the lean swings toward Miami even harder. The Heat had been starting to turn the corner before the Bucks halted them in their last outing, and this shapes up as the kind of tight road game where their toughness, foul drawing, and late-game composure can be just enough to tilt things their way. As our first pick for this matchup, the Miami Heat to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Miami is averaging 120 points per game on 46.3% shooting from the field, while allowing 117.1 points on 45.8% shooting, so their games have had a pretty lively scoring profile. From deep, the Heat are hitting 36% of their threes, they are converting 78.6% at the free throw line, and they are pulling down 47.3 rebounds per night, which helps create second chances and keeps the tempo from bogging down too often. Philadelphia is putting up 116.6 points per game on 46% shooting and giving up 115.9 points on 47% shooting, which points to another team living in that high-teen scoring range most nights. From beyond the arc, the 76ers are shooting 35.6%. They are strong at the stripe at 81.4%, and they collect 43.4 rebounds per game, a profile that leans more toward efficiency than sheer volume on the glass. When you stack those numbers side by side, you get 2 offenses that can both clear the 110 mark, 2 defenses that bend more than they lock down, and plenty of factors that favor long scoring runs rather than grinded-out basketball. The combination of solid three-point shooting, reliable free throw work, and enough rebounding for both sides to trigger transition chances suggests a pace that will not feel sleepy for long. Even if one team hits a cold stretch, the other has enough firepower to keep the scoreboard rolling, and that kind of back-and-forth rhythm usually pushes the final tally higher than a typical outing. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Washington Wizards versus Atlanta Hawks. The Washington Wizards and Atlanta Hawks meet again at State Farm Arena on Thursday night. The Wizards are coming off losses to the Hornets and the Hawks, with the Raptors up next, and the pattern has been rough as they have dropped 45 of their last 63 games. The Hawks just took care of the Nets, and the Wizards have the Trailblazers on deck, and even though they have lost 6 of their last 11, they are at least trending a bit better than Washington right now. Washington is missing a lot of pieces, with Anthony Davis, Alex Sarr, Cam Whitmore, and Trae Young all ruled out, and Keyshawn George sitting on the questionable line, which strips away a big chunk of shot creation and stability. Atlanta has its own question marks with Jalen Johnson, Zachary Rissacker, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker all tagged as questionable, but that list feels more like fine-tuning on a car that still runs than pulling the engine out of the hood. These teams just faced off, and the Hawks won that game by 21 points, which is not the kind of margin that feels like a fluke born from one hot quarter. Rematches often tighten up because both coaching staffs get a fresh look at matchups and pet sets, but the talent gap and the injury situation do not suddenly vanish just because the jerseys are seeing each other again. The Wizards are in a stretch where wins are rare, confidence is shaky, and the current injury report only piles more weight on their weaker side of the scale. Atlanta, on the other hand, has taken 3 of its last 4 and has added Kuminga to the mix, which injects some energy and athleticism into the rotation. He looked comfortable and engaged in his debut, the kind of body language that usually hints at a player being eager to prove something in a new spot. With the group trying to improve seeding for the play-in tournament, matchups like this are the ones that need to be handled with focus, not treated like casual Thursday scrimmages. It is never easy to beat the same opponent twice in a row, but the last 2 meetings have turned into blowouts in favor of Atlanta, and Washington now arrives with even less scoring punch on paper. Over 4 quarters, that gap tends to show up again, especially when one side still has something clear to chase in the standings while the other is trying simply to stay respectable. As our first pick for this matchup, the Atlanta Hawks to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Wizards are averaging 112.2 points per game on 45.9% shooting and giving up 122.8 points on 47.5% shooting, which paints the picture of a team that plays fast enough but cannot consistently keep opponents from finding good looks. From 3, Washington hits 35.2% and converts 77% at the line, while grabbing 43.4 rebounds per game, numbers that suggest decent offense but not enough stinginess on the other side of the ball. Atlanta is scoring 117 points per game on 46.8% shooting and allowing 118 points on 47.4% shooting, so their contests often turn into high-tempo, back-and-forth nights. The Hawks are connecting on 36.7% of their threes and 77.6% of their free throws, and are pulling down 42.9 rebounds per game, which keeps the offense humming but does not do a lot to suppress opponents. On paper, that combination of scoring profiles hints at another lively scoreboard, especially given how the last matchup spiraled into a one-sided result. However, the current injury situation for Washington strips away several offensive options, which can naturally slow the pace and force longer, more forced possessions where the ball sticks. When a team is missing that much firepower, it often leans more on clock-burning sets and late clock heaves rather than clean early clock looks, and that tends to chip away at total scoring. Back-to-back meetings can also lead to better defensive preparation, as both staffs have fresh film of how specific actions were defended, and small tweaks can make life harder on shooters. If this game tilts toward another comfortable margin at any point, there is also a real chance of extended garbage time stretches where benches trade empty trips and the urgency to score on every possession fades. All of that points toward a scoring environment that can land below what the raw season averages might suggest at first glance. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Houston Rockets versus Orlando Magic. Houston walks into Orlando looking like the classic road bully that knows exactly what kind of fight it wants to pick and then keeps throwing the same punch until someone stops it, which rarely happens right now. This group is sitting at 36-21, with a net rating that lives near the top of the league because they slow the game way down, squeeze the life out of possessions on defense, and then keep hitting the offensive glass until the other side feels like it is stuck in a bad scrimmage that never ends. The tempo is crawling around the mid-90 range in possessions, which keeps everything controlled, and they still manage offense and defense that both grade out in the upper tier, scoring in the mid-100 teens while holding opponents just under that mark, so they win the efficiency battle more often than not. That is the kind of profile that travels because it is not built on shooting streaks or a noisy home crowd. It is built on the simple, annoying habit of turning every half-court trip into something that feels like a dentist visit that runs long. The funny part is that their best weapon is not even glamorous, it is the constant crashing of the offensive boards, piling up around 15 or 16 extra misses they turn into chances every night, which is like giving themselves a bonus quarter of basketball spread out across a game. Those second and third efforts matter, especially for a favorite, because a decent shooting night suddenly looks great when you stack 10 to 15 more attempts on top of it and force the other team to keep defending the same action again and again until someone makes a mistake. This is technically the second game in 2 nights after a blowout win over Sacramento, so on paper that might look like a tired spot, but that last one was such a one-sided script that the main guys got to coast through the end, and the whole roster is built for slow, physical, grind-heavy games rather than track meets that empty the tank. Orlando, on the other hand, sits at 31-26, back home with that slightly jet-lagged feel you get after a long West Coast trip that featured more than a few tense finishes in Los Angeles. And now they have to resettle while still sorting out roles. A roster logic that suddenly has a gap because Franz Wagner is still out with that high ankle sprain and no clear return date, which changes how the entire offense breathes. The team profile is more solid in most things than elite at anything, with a pace right around league average and both offense and defense hanging in the middle of the pack, and they often lean on late-game shot-making instead of 4 quarters of rigid structure. That can be fun to watch, especially at home, but it also means they spend a lot of nights walking a tightrope where a few missed jumpers or tired legs in the 4th quarter swing everything fast. Here is the thing, when that kind of approach runs into a Houston group that is slow, physical, suffocating on defense, and obsessed with winning the math on extra possessions, it puts a lot of pressure on Orlando to play clean for all 4 quarters, and that is a big ask when you are coming off travel and missing one of your best release valves on offense. This whole setup feels like one of those spots where the favorite style, the way they control tempo, and the way they punish mistakes can gradually tilt the margin over the course of the night rather than in one big run, which is exactly the sort of script that usually rewards the stronger, more stable side against a slightly weary opponent. As our first pick for this matchup, the Houston Rockets to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. This matchup on the scoreboard starts with how Houston insists on playing the game at their own pace, which is to say not very fast at all. Their defense is not just good, it is structured to make you work, so opponents rarely get those easy flurries that suddenly push totals into wild territory, and that kind of consistent resistance tends to keep games in a tight scoring band more often than not. Orlando does push things a little more, tempo-wise, living closer to the middle of the league in pace and sitting in that mid-tier range on offense, which sounds like it should lean toward more points, but their real identity still leans on size, length, and making life uncomfortable on defense rather than playing in straight-line races up and down the floor. Their scoring runs hot and cold, and with Franz Wagner sidelined, the offense slows down, grows more predictable, and leans harder into star-centric possessions, which naturally eats clock and cuts down on the kind of free-flowing sequences that inflate a scoreboard. Honestly, when a team loses one of its key creators, things rarely get more explosive on offense, they usually get more deliberate, and that shift ripples through pace, shot quality, and how often both teams find easy looks in transition. Houston's edge on the offensive glass plays right into a more controlled scoring environment too, because those long possessions that end in putbacks are great for them but terrible for totals chasing big runs, and they also limit clean fast break chances for Orlando, who would love a few easy ones in front of the home crowd. Throw travel fatigue into the mix for the home side, and you get a recipe where both teams lean more into half-court sets, where defenses are set, where every bucket feels like it took real effort, and where scoring tends to arrive in steady drips instead of wild waves. Recent games for Orlando against quality opposition have already tilted toward tighter, defense-flavored finishes rather than free-scoring showcases, and paired with Houston's habit of dragging opponents into long possessions, it paints a picture of a game that feels more like a playoff-style chess match than a free-for-all shootout. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. San Antonio Spurs versus Brooklyn Nets. The San Antonio Spurs head into Barclays Center to face the Brooklyn Nets on Thursday night. The Spurs are fresh off wins over the Raptors and Pistons, and they have the Knicks waiting after this one, with 15 wins in their last 18 games showing how hot they have been lately. The Nets, on the other hand, are coming off losses to the Mavs and Hawks, with the Celtics next on their schedule, and they have dropped 20 of their last 24, which tells you how rough this stretch has been for them. San Antonio is still a bit thin up front with Mason Plumlee remaining out, but beyond that they are more or less rolling with their usual core at this point. Brooklyn comes in with a full squad again, which sounds encouraging on paper, but the recent results show that simply having bodies available has not translated into many wins. The Spurs have the kind of firepower that can blow the doors off a game when they get rolling, but there is a small catch here because they are on the second night of a back-to-back and coming off a tight win over the Raptors. They also have a poor record against the number in this exact role, with just 10 covers in their last 30 games as a double-digit favorite, which makes anyone a little nervous about laying a big number with them. The thing is, the Nets have been even worse when they are expected to get run off the floor, going 1-8 against the spread in their last 9 as a double-digit underdog. Lately, when Brooklyn is projected to lose big, they usually lean into it and do exactly that, which fits a team that looks like it is in full tank mode more often than not. There is a big talent gap between these two rosters right now, and when one side is surging and the other is sinking, that gap tends to show up in long, ugly stretches on the court. These teams already met once at the very start of the season, with the Spurs winning that one 118-107, and while a lot has shifted since then, the overall direction of both franchises still points to San Antonio being in the stronger spot. It is hard to imagine this particular version of the Nets flipping the script enough to change the basic shape of the matchup, especially when the Spurs have only gotten more confident since that first meeting. The number on this game was always going to be hefty for a matchup like this, and even the return of Claxton has not been enough to thaw out Brooklyn's ice-cold form lately. A massive spread for a road team that played last night is usually a red flag, but here it feels more like a reflection of how little faith the market has in the Nets, and that is tough to argue with given the recent results. So even with the rest disadvantage baked in, the Spurs remain the side that makes sense if you are fading Brooklyn's current trajectory rather than betting on a sudden turnaround. As our first pick for this matchup, the San Antonio Spurs to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The San Antonio Spurs are averaging 118.5 points on 47.8% shooting and allowing 111.9 points on 45.3% shooting, which shows a team that scores freely but still keeps opponents somewhat in check compared to pure track meet squads. They shoot 35% from beyond the arc and 78.4% at the free throw line, and they grab 46.7 rebounds per game, so there is plenty of offense, plus enough work on the glass to control tempo when they choose. The Brooklyn Nets are averaging just 106.9 points on 44.4% shooting and giving up 114.8 points on 49.3% shooting, a mix that points to a struggling offense and a leaky defense at the same time. They shoot 34% from 3, 77% from the free throw line, and they pull down 40.3 rebounds per game, numbers that do not exactly scream explosive scoring or dominant interior presence. Putting that together, you get one team that can fill it up and another that often sputters, which at first glance might hint at a big total, but the details tell a slightly different story. The Nets' offensive struggles mean they frequently go through long dry spells, and when that happens against a superior opponent, the game can tilt into a comfortable margin where the leading side does not need to push the pace late. A matchup where one team is heavily favored can easily turn into a controlled effort in the second half, with the stronger side managing possessions, shortening the game, and avoiding unnecessary risks that might lead to extra trips up and down the floor. If Brooklyn continues to have trouble generating efficient looks against a Spurs defense that is better than it often gets credit for, their scoring may lag well behind San Antonio's, which drags the combined total down. Even with the Spurs' strong offensive profile, the combination of a struggling Nets attack, the possibility of a lopsided scoreboard, and some clock-burning possessions in the later stages all lean toward a scoring output that lands below what their raw averages might suggest. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.